Hello there, and welcome to today's episode of the Only Endometriosis podcast you need. Today we're going to be talking about the importance of a vision when you start on your endometriosis journey. And just the same as any journey, if you think about it as a project, if you think about it as something that you want to achieve, it's always really, really beneficial to have in mind exactly what you want the outcome to be when you start. And this is something I used to bang on about in my working environment. I used to be a project manager, a program manager, and this is something that I always used to talk about. I started life as performance management assistant, which means, it really is as dull as it sounds. Well, actually it isn't, because I'm a bit of a geek and I do love a spreadsheet, but it's all about performance management, it's all about targets, it's all about how to measure success. Whilst I don't advocate going into that amount of detail and that amount of geekery when it comes to our health, there are some key things that I've transferred over. Now, bear in mind that when I was doing my first job, that's when I kind of started on my Western treatment pathway for endometriosis. So I was kind of doing that job at the same time as I started on the abdominal implants. And actually moved into my first sort of contract management, project management job when I was in the throes of I think it was the second round of implants. But anyway, that's by the by. So I think that's probably why I'm so passionate about this idea of having these visions, these key milestones almost, when it comes to your endometriosis journey. But don't turn off. It's not going to be that dull. I was going to say I'm not advocating the use of spreadsheets. I do have a symptom tracker spreadsheet, which those of you who have worked with me will probably be laughing at the moment. So there is use of a spreadsheet, but it's not all about spreadsheets. It's more about manifesting. And again, you might raise a few eyebrows at that, but I'm all about manifesting. I use manifestation in every area of my life. And health is no different. So if we're going to be manifesting good health, if we want to achieve a life where our endometriosis isn't impacting or we can manage that impact, then knowing what that life looks like is crucial if you're going to get there. Before I go into any more detail, I do just want to do a quick sales pitch. If you are interested in the sort of the vision and how to get that vision, but more importantly, how to work towards that vision, I've actually had an endometriosis empowerment workbook on Etsy for the last, 6 months or so. I've never marketed it. I think I've only sold, I've got a menopause one as well. Between the two of them, I've only sold one copy, which actually I was quite chuffed at, given that I've done no marketing at all. But if you do want a hand with this, if you do want some support, it's about 10 quid. If you go onto Etsy and just Google endometriosis empowerment, then it should hopefully come up hopefully on the first couple of pages anyway. But that will just give you a bit of a steer, a bit of a guiding hand. There's also a link to the spreadsheet that I mentioned as well. You get that for free. It's just a Google spreadsheet. You'll get a link to that for free as well if you buy that. So if you like what I'm saying and you want a little bit of it without going into depth of working with me intensely, then that's kind of a nice stepping stone that will just give you a little bit of a head start. So when I talk about visioning, when I'm talking about manifesting, what on earth am I talking about? Certainly when you bring into chuck in key performance indicators into the mix, it isn't necessarily like that. When we talk about especially our health when it comes to endometriosis, and even any health condition as well, so whether you're struggling with your menopause, whether you've got something like IBS, chronic fatigue, whatever chronic health condition you're facing, you kind of buy into this rhetoric. Obviously, you would love to feel better. Obviously, you would love a life where your symptoms aren't impacting. But quite often, we don't go further than that. And that's not our fault. By and large, it's because we are fed this rhetoric from very early stages in this endometriosis journey that you're never going to feel better, that endometriosis is uncurable, and that even these gods and goddesses in the white jackets, see previous podcast episodes, can't help us. So if they can't help us, then there is no help for us. So we are browbeaten. And quite often when women start working with me and people like me, they completely believe that, well, at best, they're not going to feel good again. They're not going to feel any better. And at worst, that they're just going to keep feeling worse and worse and worse. So that's kind of the first reason why having a vision is so important. What we want to do is to really, really change this damaging rhetoric. You will have heard me talk and bang on no end about the importance of mindset, the importance of the words. We cast spells all the time with the words we are using. Our mind believes what we're telling it. Our body believes the words we're saying. So the words we're saying are really, really important. You'll have heard me mention the RAS at the back of our mind, that filter that filters out all of the noise, all of the unnecessary, all of the irrelevant noise in our environment. You will have heard me talk about all of those things. When we're creating a vision, what we're essentially doing is putting ourselves, brackets, mind, body, and soul, in this space where we can believe that this vision of life without endometriosis impacting is possible. So what we're doing by having this vision, we are, like I say, we're creating this alternative reality. We are shifting the rhetoric. We are shifting our belief. If we keep on with this vision long enough, we are shifting our belief that we can't feel better into the positive sphere, into, yes, we can feel better. This is what we want it to look like. Now, I'm saying it like it's really, really simple. Writing this vision down makes it even more powerful. As you know, this RAS, when we're writing stuff down, when we're actively doing something, even just thinking about it, will start to change the beliefs, will start to change the rhetoric, will start to change how your mind thinks about your endometriosis. And again, same with any project you're working on. But the more intense you go with it, the deeper you go with it, so things like a vision board, writing things down, having monthly, weekly, daily, however you want to do it, but having reflections and monitoring your progress against the goals, against the vision, all of this serves to strengthen that rhetoric, strengthen that belief that actually you can feel better with endometriosis. You can live a life where your symptoms don't get in the way, where you can control the symptoms and where you can control how much they impact. The more you start to plan for this life, the more you start to vision this life, the more you start to believe this life is true. Now, what can happen is, especially when you are in the throes of pain or you're kind of at the point in your journey when you are constantly being told that there is no other way, there is no way of feeling better, there is no way of managing these symptoms. When you're in the throes of all of that, I don't know what to call it, the reality dampener can kick in. So that's when the chimp, my friend Abby, she's fabulous, she calls it the mind chimp. The mind chimp kicks in then. And the chimp starts to look at the how. The chimp starts to look at the gravest reality of the situation. And it starts to kick in with the, yes, okay, but how do you do that if you're doing this? How do you do that? You don't have the knowledge, you don't have the skills, you don't have the energy. All of these negative beliefs start kicking in. So the first thing I'm going to say when it comes to thinking about our vision is when you're sitting down, I'm going to give you some almost like a task if you want to do it, but it's going to give you some tips when it comes to your vision. When you sit down to formulate your vision, don't even start to think about the how. That's where the workbook comes in, if you do get the workbook, or that's when working with somebody like me comes in. We can teach you the how. When you start on any journey, so it's the same if you think about your driving test. If you think about learning to drive, when you sit for the first time in that driving seat, I remember the first time I sat, my dad, weird insight into my family life, my dad taught me to drive in inverted commas, sitting on the driveway, making noises like a car engine so that I could understand at which pitch. I can't believe, I don't know if I'm even going to release this because I'm rambling so much, but sitting on the drive, making noises like a car engine so that I would identify at which pitch to start changing gear. Then I would actively change gear in the car, not going anywhere, not even with the engine turned on, just sitting in the car, and he would be talking to me about what's coming up and the bend in the road coming ahead, and I'd be talking through what I'd be doing, and I'd be moving the steering wheel. Anyway, bonkers. But it's not as bonkers as I may be making out, because not only is that a vision, but he's actually instilling in me things to do so that when I got onto the road, theoretically, whether it worked or not, when I got onto the road, it felt less scary. Having said all of that, I remember the first time I got in the car and it moved, or I moved it, the first time I actually drove a car, and then the first time I drove the car on my own, so after I passed my test. that's a scary, scary place to be. You know you want to pass your driving test, and you have all these, if you're 17 or however old you are at the time, you have all of these great sort of excited visions around, oh, brilliant, I can go to the cinema with my friends, I can go shopping, I can do blah, blah, blah. So you have in your mind the whys of how you're going to pass your test. And you envisage this life, you envisage this fantastic freedom that you'll have once you pass your test. So you've kind of got a little bit of a vision there, but you have no idea of the why. And actually, if you listened to the chimp brain, you would never think about sitting in a car and teaching yourself to, I mean, you can't anyway, it's illegal, but you would never think about teaching yourself how to drive. And that's exactly the same with any project. When you start a project, you don't have all of the knowledge, you don't have all of the skills, you don't have all of the people, the circle of support that you need to complete that project successfully. So if you sat down at the beginning of any project and did your vision for the project, and if you let that mind chimp, that mind monkey, that dampener get in the way, then you would never do anything, because you would let that seed of doubt creep in so much. Well, you don't have the skills, you don't have the knowledge, you're being told you can't do it. Well, that's the same with any project we start. So the key thing when we're starting this vision is to just focus on the vision. Just ignore the monkeys, just ignore the chimp, just ignore all of this sort of dampening reality. Because the whys and the hows you can come to later. And like I say, the workbook will talk you through all of that. So the vision is what you want to focus on first of all. So exactly the same, like I say, as starting any project. If you have a vision of where you want to get to, then the chances of you succeeding are massively increased. And the reason for that, I think, is twofold. Anyway, it might be threefold, it might be onefold. We shall see what happens. It definitely, so if you have a vision, the first thing is you have something to measure your success against. Now, this can be a double-edged sword when it comes to your health, because most projects have setbacks. I've never worked on a work-based project or a personal project that has gone exactly to plan, that hasn't needed any mitigating factors, that hasn't felt at some point like, there's an advert at the minute that says, I think it's for an accounting software or something, but it says something like running your own business is like running through a desert in quicksand, and then he says all of these things, and it's just basically somebody drowning in sand. You get to that point at any project you're ever managing, and your health is exactly the same. The difference with your health is that it can be massively more impactful. So normally when you're working on a project, you have other things going on, you have other things in your life, you have your health, you have your social life, you have your relationships, blah, 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 everything else that can make you feel good. When it comes to your health, viewing your health as a project, if your health is bad, then that can literally impact on everything. So having that vision is crucial, but also knowing that healing isn't linear. So you might have a month where you feel absolutely fantastic, where, I don't know, 28 days out of the 31 days have been brilliant. You've had bags of energy, you've felt happy, you've slept really well. And then next month, everything feels like it's just going backwards. You're having headaches, you're having bloating, you're having mid-cycle bleeds, and you can feel like you're not making any progress at all. That's when having that vision is so, so important. If you track against your vision, that makes it even more important, because actually you can go back to your tracking and you can say, do you know what? This month has been a 6 out of 10, but last month was an 8 out of 10. So last month was a step closer. So I know I can get there again, because if you've got there once, you can absolutely get there again. And even if you haven't got there once, you know you can get there. But having that vision is crucial, because it will keep you motivated. It will keep you energized. It will keep you excited about what you can achieve, especially if you've been able to bring in the people to support you and you've got additional resources and you're building that confidence every single day. That vision is what will keep you focused, and it will keep you proactive. And even if you've had a week, 2 weeks, a month or 2 months where you've just hibernated, where you've gone back under the duvet, whenever you crawl out of that duvet, if you pick up your phone, wherever your vision is, if you pick up your Pinterest board, whatever, however you've done it, that's then there to motivate you again. You can see exactly what it was. You're not starting from scratch. You can see exactly what it was that you're aiming for. So it also gives clarity. So like I say, it tells our brain that healing is possible, that living this life is possible. Now, it might be that that vision changes. Quite often, it's really, really difficult for us to see what life without endometriosis looks like, especially if we're in the throes of a flare-up, or like I say, we're surrounded by that negative mindset of other people. So it can be really, really difficult to see what the vision is. I know when I've started working with some clients, their vision has just been, I just want to not take a day off work in a month. It's been a really, really basic, and that's, some may argue, some purists may argue that's not a vision, that's just a goal. But at some point, some women, that's all they can think about, because they are so browbeaten by their symptoms, by the environment that they've been in regarding their endometriosis, that is the only vision they have. To turn that from a goal to a vision, I was going to say it's really simple. It isn't. It actually can be really, really difficult. But the questions that I ask on a one-to-one level, I probably should have looked at the worksheet before I started mentioning the worksheet, but I think the worksheet talks through putting yourself in that situation. So for this particular client whose vision was, I just want to be able to get up and go to work every day. This was a client just after lockdown, so she was going back into the office. She'd really enjoyed working from home because the flexibility meant that her symptoms barely impacted at all. Now she was going back into the office. It was actually probably about a year after lockdown, so she had gone back full time to the office. They still had some flexibility, but she had to be in the office for the majority of the time, and she'd been taking significant sick days. She'd been working from home, but she'd also had to take sick days as well. Part of that was due to the anxiety around having to take time off. So her vision of, or let's say her goal of not having to take time off work sick was the only thing she wanted to do. She wasn't bothered about anything else. She wasn't particularly bothered about reducing any particular symptoms. That was the only thing she could think about. It was her only focus. So we worked through that goal with a small g. What is the actual vision for that? So sit with that goal. Imagine that you're in that position where you've just had a month where you've not taken any time off work. How does that make you feel? Imagine you're in your performance review or supervision, whatever it is that you call them, and you're sat there and your manager's telling you, this is unbelievable. The first time in years that you've got 100% attendance rate. This is absolutely unreal. For the last 3 months, you've been at your desk every day. How would that make you feel? Feel the emotions, feel whatever you're feeling, pride, whatever it is that somatic response almost. What is it that you're feeling? What is that emotional response? That's the emotional response we want to trigger every time we look at the vision. So that's the difference between a goal and a vision. Her goal is still her vision, if you see what I mean, or her vision is still her goal. Her ultimate outcome is that she wanted to be able to go to work every day. Something that most people take for granted, and actually a lot of people don't want to do. But that was her goal. And actually, when she put it into a vision, when she actually visualized what that would look like, what that would feel like, she could really start to get motivated. She could really start to believe that it was possible, because she's envisaging having the conversation. She's envisaging sort of whatever matrix they had at work to see that. She could envisage that. So it started to become a little bit more of a reality. And bizarrely, as we worked through, we did a 12-week program. And as we worked through the 12-week program, her vision started to change. So just because you have a vision at the beginning doesn't mean you have to stick to it, which is why coming back to your vision is really, really powerful. Her vision started to change. So the better she started to feel, the more she sat in this vision of, you've been at work every day for the last 3 months. How are you feeling? The more she sat with that, the more she really experienced that in her mind, she started to really reflect on other areas of her life where her symptoms were impacting, and where if she could manage her symptoms better, her life would look better. So we then started, I have a well-being wheel. And a lot of you will have heard of the well-being wheel. It's a well-used tool, or versions of it are a well-used tool in many places, in many spheres. And we looked at different areas. So we looked at relationships, and she started to talk about how she had a fabulous relationship with her partner. They'd been together many, many years. They'd lived together for a long time. He understood endometriosis. Sorry, I'm just filling up my dog's water as I'm talking. If you can hear water, there's nothing more sinister going on than that. There was, so that she was looking at a relationship. They had an active sex life when she could, but he was very understanding when they couldn't. Her friends were really understanding. She, obviously, like most people with endo and chronic health, spent a lot of time worrying about having to cancel commitments, balancing commitments with what she knew she could do. And then she started to think about all of these areas. So she started to think about how a relationship would look better if her symptoms weren't there. She started to think how her social life would improve. So suddenly her vision was completely different. And towards the end of the program, she started even to build in the possibility of having children, which was something, she even said it was something she'd never even dared think about. Now, this client was fabulous. She was about 26 or 27 at the time. And she sort of thought, she hadn't really given it any thought, even to the point where whether it would or wouldn't be possible. But when we started to talk about it, she kind of thought, it's not going to be possible. I've got endometriosis, blah, blah, blah. But we started including it in the vision. The more she thought about it, the more she pictured it, the more she believed it, and the more real it felt. So the more her RAS was telling her, the more her motivation was, and the better she started feeling. It's an incredible cycle. Not necessarily a cycle. It's almost like a snowball. That's the word I'm looking for, a snowball effect. And that's not to say that every day, that every week, that every month you get more and more positive and you believe more and more. There are setbacks. It's not a linear journey, but the more you've experienced that positive feeling, the more you've experienced the elation and the trust and the hope and the pride, whatever it is that you're feeling, the more you feel that, the more that becomes the normal and the more you believe that you can get there. And the better you start to feel. You've got the actual healing happening, but the power of that positivity has such an immense impact on our bodies. So, your vision doesn't necessarily have to be your ultimate vision. If you can't vision your life without endometriosis, then picture the area where it's impacting most and vision how that area will look without your symptoms impacting. Then, once you have your symptoms, we've all got some, that's the whole point of the podcast. If we didn't have symptoms, well, actually, if we didn't have symptoms, what a lovely world it'd be, and I'd have to find another job, which I wouldn't mind. I had actually put my phone on Do Not Disturb there, but for some reason it's bypassed it, which is really, really annoying. So apologies. I'm not going to re-record this, so that's going to go out with Nirvana blasting a little bit through the airwaves. But anyway, so I'm coming to the end of this, so I'm not going to re-record this. I shall crack on. So once you've got your vision, once you have sat in that place of visualizing the end result, the outcome, then that may well change. You may well change that vision. But once you've got all of that in place, once you've got that vision nailed down, you can then start to look at the how. And when you look at the how, you don't get bogged down with the negativity. Of course, you look a bit at the negativity, you look at the risk management, you look at things you can do to mitigate it. But that's all done with a positive sphere. That's all done through a positive lens. Realistic, but positive. But when you have that vision, you've got your high level, you've got that strategic overview. You can then break it down into smaller, more achievable things. You can look at the how, but you can look at the how in terms of smaller steps that will get you there eventually. But we're not looking at this podcast. I'll do another future podcast probably next year. I'm actually going to be running a workshop in January. If you subscribe to my Substack, then you'll see an email about it probably, I don't know, whenever I get around to it. Hopefully by the end of December, it might well be the beginning of January. But that will be about manifesting happiness for next year. And part of that will be health related. It's not all going to be health related. It depends very much who's on the workshop. But it's going to be looking at that well-being wheel, and included in that will be endometriosis or related issues. So if you do want to look for that, if you do want to kind of take a bit more action in terms of manifesting that good health, then that might be something for you. There's the worksheet as well. But just today's podcast is all about that vision. So if I can invite you to do anything today, it would be to set aside half an hour distraction free. Make sure your other half can't get through you do not disturb on your phone. Yes, I'm going to have to sort that. I don't know if anybody else has got, I've got quite an old iPhone and the updates seem to be sending it completely doolally at the minute. There's phones not working, phones working when it shouldn't be working. It's a nightmare. But anyway, I would invite you to take half an hour, set aside half an hour of uninterrupted time. And literally you can journal if you have a journal. If you don't have a journal, just get a bit of paper. There's the workbook if you can find the workbook. But you don't need to invest in anything like that to do a vision at all. It's literally just sitting down and thinking about how your life will look without the constraints of endometriosis. It can be quite tough, it can be hard. If it's not coming to you, then abandon it and come back a different day. But once you get into the swing of it, it's a really, really powerful and emotional thing to do. And you might actually find you have some emotional reaction to it. So do be gentle with yourself when you're going through this process. Put that vision, when you get that vision, put it somewhere where you can come back to it. I always start, if people work in different ways, so it might well be that you start on Pinterest or other apps are available. It might be that you just write it free-flowing. It might be that you put bullet points. However works for you, there's no right and wrong. Personally, I like to write it down first, and then when I've got that vision sort of in my head, I then make it visual. So I then go onto something like Pinterest and create a vision board, because I find that when I want to come back to it, I find it easier to look at the pictures than I do to read my own words. It's nice to read the words, and I do keep them in the journal so I can come back and read them if I need to. But just having those actual visions makes it so much easier. So I just invite you, like I say, 30 minutes of uninterrupted time. I invite you to feel what your life without the constraints of your endometriosis symptoms would look like. And it might be, like I say, you might start off like that client who just wanted to go to work. It might be that you are able to sit there and think back to when your symptoms didn't impact, and that's how you want it to be again, but feel the feelings. The key thing here is to feel the emotions, feel the feelings that vision brings you. And the other key thing is not to get bogged down in the negativity. So if you get those mindset demons, if you get the mind chimps, if you get the dampening reality checks of, but you're not clever enough, you're not strong enough, you're not well enough. That's a big one. You're not well enough. You don't have the knowledge. You don't have this. You don't have that. Silence them. Because, okay, some of it might be true. You might not have the knowledge to manage all of your endometriosis long into your future. But that doesn't mean you can't get the knowledge, and it also doesn't mean you can't ask people who do for help. So if you do get those mindset demons, reframe them, silence them. I will be well enough. I will get the skills. And move on, move through it. Don't listen to them. Don't let the doubts, don't let the minutiae of the how get in the way of your visioning. Once you have that vision, like I say, you can then move forward. You can then put into place small, tangible actions. You can start your journey towards that vision, but that vision is the key thing. That's what's going to keep you motivated once you do start. That vision will be the thing that keeps you energized on that journey. So I hope that helps. Sorry about the interruptions. There's always one or two, but today has been the full bingo card of interruptions, I fear. But that's life. I wish you every success with this. If you do need a hand, like I say, check out the Endometriosis Empowerment Workbook on Etsy. Subscribe to my Substack. Goodness, he's not getting the hint. Subscribe to my Substack, and then you will get notification of the workshop in January. It's going to be part of my membership next year. I'm revamping how I work completely, and every month we're going to have a workshop on the third Tuesday of every month, lunchtime. It'll all be recorded, and all the recordings will be available to members. And that's the membership of the Substack as well. So if you go onto Substack, you'll see the membership. I think it's £6 a month at the minute. That will go up at some point, but it's just £6 a month. So wholly affordable, hopefully. You get health clinics as well where you can drop in and ask me questions, and there's something else involved in it that I can't quite remember because I wasn't planning on doing a plug for it. But hey, this podcast has gone haywire, so why not go the whole hog? Thank you very much for your time and your energy today. I wish you every happiness and health in the week ahead. If you do need anything, then please do reach out. And yes, thank you very much for listening.